There's been a growing number of African families in the UK over the past 30 years, and some face problems raising their children due to social exclusion, poor housing and access to healthcare. And this can lead to a whole range of problems, from mental illness to drug and substance misuse, and physical and domestic abuse cases. AFRUCA's main concern when working with African families is to ensure children are raised within UK law. There can be a conflict between African cultural and religious practices on the one hand and the procedures carried out by practitioners on the other. Harmful practices that can put children at risk include the use of children as domestic servants, female genital mutilation, physical abuse and neglect, and branding children as witches.
Child trafficking is the movement of children and young people for the purpose of exploitation and abuse. A lot of African children are trafficked from Africa into the UK to be used as domestic servants, forced into sexual exploitation, for forced labor. Sometimes children are trafficked for benefit fraud as well. Each year, there are a number of children trafficked, and this, we believe, is just the tip of the iceberg. We believe there's so many children as well who are still haven't been identified. Because of the nature of child trafficking, most of them do not have their documents, their legal documents like passports, so it's taken off them. They can't really tell the authorities who they claim to be. Their stories are taken to be not credible enough. Rather than being seen as a victim, they're seen as someone who wants to abuse the system just to obtain a form of leave. They do not have access to education, to health, to social services, to benefits. They're kind of in the system, but then they're not accounted for, so they're kind of invisible. They've lost touch with their communities, their family, their sisters, their siblings. There's also the mental effect as well as a result of trafficking. So most of them do develop post-traumatic stress disorder. Some become very anxious. There are issues with self-harm as well. They don't trust people, they don't trust authorities as well. And this has a serious effect in terms of their development and in terms of them functioning in the society as normal human beings.
A family friend brought this trafficked victim to the UK from Nigeria with an understanding that she was coming to improve her education. Unfortunately, she was neglected and mistreated over a number of years.
They told my parents they're bringing me here to school, better education. I was living with an auntie, but from the age of 12, 13, when I was in year 7, I had to work to get my own school uniform. I used to work in a laundry, so I have to go in the morning to open it up before I go to school, and then go back when I'm done in school to clean it up. And by the time I sit down to do my assignments and everything, I wouldn't go to bed until about 1 a.m. I didn't even have a bed, so I wouldn't go to the sofa until about 1 a.m. It wasn't up until I was in year 10 in school that my tutors and my teachers actually noticed that there's something actually wrong with this girl. It's funny because I was always late, so they decided to give me a late pass. So when I come in late, I'm allowed to go in and there's no problem with me. Even though I had been trafficked, it took a very, very long time for me to be accepted in the system as a trafficked victim. What pains me the most is the fact that I always feel this sense of loneliness inside of me. That's not fair because I did not ask for it.
AFRUCA does a lot of multi-agency work with the UK government, children's services and local authorities, helping them to better identify child victims of trafficking from Africa to ensure that the children's rights are taken into consideration.
Witchcraft branding is accusing a child that he or she is harboring what is essentially of an evil spirit that is hell-bent to cause misfortune or harm to a member of the family or the rest of the community. This happens, for instance, if there is something misfortune takes place in the family, then the logical action is to get rid of this evil spirit. They are trying to look for an explanation of what happened, what caused it, on the belief that nothing happens without any reason. The explanation is that this could be caused by witchcraft. The accusation has a devastating psychological effect on the child, but not only on the child, but on the whole family. Once accused, you can't love that child. It's like if you said a family has got a member who is a terrorist. In the process of expelling evil spirits, that would be beating the child to beat the devil out, burning the child, semi-strangulation or isolation to stop the spreading of the evil spirit by members of the family or the community. AFRUCA has been at the forefront of asking government to take action, both legal and in practice, to stop the branding of children as witches. And from that campaign, AFRUCA was able to have a national working group to tackle abuse linked to faith or belief.
Physical abuse is any intentional injury to a child that causes pain. Neglect is not caring for a child properly in terms of their physical needs. In some parts of Africa, it is acceptable to hit your child, it is acceptable to leave children alone. But actually what's very, very clear is that the child has a right, it's enshrined in law. There's an increasing number of African children who are being, being subject to child protection plan. And that's why it's really very, very important that we try and raise awareness and try and support families as early as possible to make sure that we reduce that number. The work of organizations like AFRUCA is very critical because they help the organization, they help the government agencies to understand the tradition and also to train the staff within the government agencies, and also working with families who have had children removed to try and get them back to the parents. It's very important for Africans to take control of the situation because it is the best way to actually protect children, and also it is much more effective in terms of the outcome for the children and for the community.
FGM is the removal of the clitoris and the vulvar area for non-therapeutic reason. We know that about 28 to 30 countries perform FGM in Africa, so it's very important to reach out to the community, to work with the community, to help them to change their attitude and mindset around FGM.
Type 4 FGM is labia elongation, as an example. By that I mean when the labia, the clitoris of a young girl especially, they are pulled out and elongated.
The immediate complications of FGM include hemorrhage, shock. In some cases, the child can bleed to death. One can talk about the psychological impact, which include post-traumatic stress syndrome. This includes anxiety, flashback memories, and traumatic experience for some of these women.
The impact of labia elongation on children is not different from female genital mutilation type 1. We are also talking about infections. We are also talking about early sexual activity. A girl might also hate sex for the rest of their lives because it remains a myth.
Back home, or the country of origin, FGM is seen as a positive thing. It's seen as a rite of passage. It's seen as preparing the girls for adulthood. And then now here in the West, obviously, it's seen as the opposite. It's seen as child abuse. In the past, people will argue and say, well, this is our culture. Why are you bringing our private things to the public? But now things are changing, attitudes are changing. Lots of community are trying to help and to be involved in the campaign.
Women like us, we shouldn't hide those stories. I went through labia elongation myself and many other women. AFRUCA has taken a very big step in correcting the information because there is no abuse that is better. There is no mutilation that is better. As long as you are, pulling or cutting, you are actually abusing a child.
We now have lots of programs out there which is being supported by the government as well. We need to train professionals. Professionals need to know how to identify girls who might be at risk of FGM. With all this, the aim is to end FGM in one generation.
An important part of AFRUCA's work is the training of champions who engage directly with the various African communities across the UK to pass on valuable information and, in the process, raise awareness. In Manchester, a group of young female anti-FGM champions visited a local community radio station to speak about their role in spreading the anti-FGM message to members of the African community.
Hi guys, and welcome back to Let's End the Silence. I am here with the girls. Can you tell me about what you knew about FGM before you got involved?
I thought it was mainly in Africa, and I didn't realise that it was actually still going on here.
Yeah. What kind of things did you learn in your training?
She gave us some statistics about how many people get it done in the UK. I could be sitting in class and 7 girls in my classroom could be undergoing FGM and I didn't even know.
This whole topic is something that nobody wants to speak about. It's like a hush-hush.
We're planning to train even more people our age so that we can inspire them to go out and reach those communities that we haven't been able to reach and spread the word.
Eradicating FGM starts with the community, it starts with you guys. And so thank you guys for coming on the show.
Thank you for
having us.
Brilliant.
As African communities are growing, developing and adapting within UK society, our thinking also changes. AFRUCA is speaking out against harmful cultural practices and also raising awareness. It's time to re-examine some of our customs and traditions. The next step is to bridge the gap between African community organisations and statutory agencies that work to protect children. It's time for us all to take a stand to protect and safeguard future African generations.